call to order the April 21st Municipal Authority meeting. We are just returning from an executive session of the board. Again, I call to order the April 21st, 2025 meeting of the Municipal Authority. We are just returning from an executive session of the board to discuss privilege matters and litigation issues. May I have a roll call? Walter Virginis.
Present.
Steve Mackel.
Here.
Tim Kelly.
Here.
And Kevin Moyer,
Here.
who is here with us just as.
I think Kevin's an observer this much in
Yes.
anticipation, because although he's been appointed, he hasn't been sworn in yet. So hopefully we won't need his vote to achieve anything this evening, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. And I do just want to put on the record too that Tom Greco has submitted his resignation from the board, and we do appreciate the service that he has provided this authority. Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everybody's had a chance to review the agenda. Okay. Do we have any public, did I miss anything? No.
Need to go ahead and approve the agenda.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there was a motion there for it. Okay, yes. Okay, sorry. Everybody's had a chance to review the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Walter, for the second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next, members of the public that might be here for agenda items. And if nothing on the agenda that, I thought for French, the French is on the, French Road is on the agenda. So if you want to come up, if you're here for the work that is being, done tonight, we do have some bids that have come in for the construction of some
So
sewer work.
you're certainly welcome to be here to just watch and see what happens, but if you want to say something about that item, now would be the time to make any comment on it to the board.
I think we're just.
If I can have you come to the mic, only because if somebody's at home listening, they wouldn't hear unless we're at the mic.
Okay, so all three of us live on French Road. We have had issues with a lateral shared sewer line that it turns out is the responsibility of the township. And all three of us were not aware that we were even on a shared sewer line until we were having some issues with backups. But we're trying to find out what the plan is for either repair or replacement with minimal disruption to all of our properties, because some of us have paver patios and things that are in our backyards that we're looking just to kind of know what the plan is. And up to this point, this goes back to 2019 was kind of our first instance of backup. So we're 5.5 years in, and we're just it's been not a whole lot of communication. So we're trying to figure out what the plan is, and like I said, minimal disruption to all three of our properties. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? We hear you on that. I mean, we live in this township too. And yeah, this was quite a big issue that was discovered with respect to the sewer there on French. And, it's been something we've been working on, so.
Can we
Appreciate
get
it.
your name and address just for the record, please? 307. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on then to the minutes from our March 31st, 2025 meeting. Everybody's had a chance to review those minutes. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Walter. Thank you. Questions or comments? I did have a comment. I think I had recognized that there was an issue with the minutes and asked that that be changed, and I don't think it was.
This is from
This-
last month's.
Yes, from last month's meeting.
So this
Well, no,
would be,
February.
the
So
February minutes.
February meetings minutes were not changed.
There, that's the change.
Was that what I asked for?
Yeah, you said annual billing.
Okay, that's right, annual
And then you wanted highlighted that that was the amount for the,
in the
that
amount.
year for
Okay,
2025.
this billing will be, okay, all right,
and so
Did we do what you wanted?
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
just wanted to make sure.
Maybe I forgot what I wanted. I don't know, but yes, that looks good. All right, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, moving on. Treasurer's report. Do we have a treasurer's report? Caitlin, will you be giving
Yeah,
that?
you
or-
do have one in front of you. Yeah. I'm glad to answer any questions. Basically, again, this is a kind of a hard quarter because the first quarter, we actually don't start doing billings until April for the first quarter because we bill in arrears after the event's already happened. So your income shows less than your expenses at this point, which is always the case. And so in the first quarter. So the big thing that I would bring your attention to, we're kind of on target expense wise of what we thought we would be, except for in the area, we did add a new line. At my request, Caitlin added a new line regarding the overflows. So that if at any point we have an overflow, we can, and what the cleanup is, we will be able to track that going forward, so that you will know how much that was. You're not going to see that this month, but we've added it to the report so that you will be able to see that amount as what it is. Because some years we don't have an overflow, and hopefully most years we don't, but when we do, obviously it can be rather expensive to clean up. And so that's what that additional line is for you.
Moving on then to the engineer's report, Dave Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recognizing there are several items further along in the agenda, I'll kind of skip over them in my engineer's report and address them as they come up in the agenda. First, I wanted to give a short update on to the authority on the sanitary sewer project. This is actually something that's it's an action item that the authority had already voted on for payment to AP Construction. It was contingent upon removal of erosion sediment controls along the driveway for the old Masters Pump Station. I did take the opportunity to visit the site today to verify whether all of the E&S controls have been removed. As of last week, in speaking with Steve, there was still some filter fabric or stock fabric that was left in place. It looks like there's still a little bit of that in place currently. So my understanding in talking with our site inspector was that he reached out to the contractor. They were trying to get a crew out. They were trying to make it happen last week. Obviously that didn't happen. So they were saying sometime early this week. So nonetheless, it's an item that's already been approved by the authority, and we'll just stay on top of making sure it's buttoned up to our satisfaction before that payment is made to them. The Ashford service area contract, recall we had processed the notice of termination for the NPDES permit. We reached out to the Delaware County Conservation District. They have acknowledged that it is on their desk for review. They have not gotten to it yet, and they said that we should hear something, quote unquote, soon. So I would expect that NOT should, since it's a response to their initial comments, that NOT should be processed. If not, there should be something, if anything remains, it should be very minor. So the authority fat oil and grease program, recall we had enforcement action against the Luigi and Giovanni caterers at 3601 Chapel Lane. The hearing for that enforcement action was continued to May 2nd. They have retained an engineer to evaluate their existing operations and to report on the operations and the adequacy of the existing grease traps. So until that engineer has the opportunity to get out and evaluate the systems and the operations, we're not going to have a report, obviously. So I'm hoping within the next, couple of weeks, we'll hear something back from them. I do know that the engineer that they've hired is very capable of performing the tasks that we've asked them to perform. And I do note that Luigi and Giovanni has been keeping up with their operation and maintenance obligations as we've requested on a monthly basis. They, pump and clean their grease traps, which the last report was submitted to the authority on March 14th. Ellis Preserve, we are ongoing with capacity consistency letters, and there's been some challenges with getting information from the developer and or their contractors with regard to water usage data and information with regard to the tenants that are to be occupying the various units in those buildings. So I'm continuously working with Newtown codes in that regard. Recall the Blush and Fellini tenants along Westchester Pike had an issue with blockages. The Blush Salon owner has filed their public sewer connection permit application. We issued that permit back in March, and at least the outdoor component of that has been completed. My understanding is there's a little bit of indoor plumbing work to do. I think they may have to shut down their operations for a little bit to be able to complete that work, but they're on their way to completing everything there. The matter at 310 Echo Valley Lane with regard to evaluation of the dead or dying trees. We have a follow-up site meeting scheduled with the township's arborist actually tomorrow at noon to walk that site. We've asked the arborist to prepare a report to substantiate the findings. So that way we have something on record with the authority for direction with that property owner. And lastly, the small water and sewer grant application, which is due April 30th. I just have not had time to connect with the township's engineer to evaluate the stormwater issues that are causing a problem at Oak Hill Lane. The threshold for that projects for the small water and sewer projects is about $30,000. The restoration component at Oak Hill will probably be a little less than that anyway. So until we can connect with the township engineer and figure out the stormwater component of that and the restoration, it doesn't seem like it's an appropriate time to submit for that application at this time. So that concludes my engineer report, other than the items that are included further down in the agenda.
Right, unless anybody else has any questions at this point, we'll be hearing from Dave again, I think, later in the meeting. Operation Manager's report.
Yes, I would just bring your attention to, if you look at the KBX report, you'll see we had two different cleanups that we did, or they did on our behalf. We responded to with them. You also notice recommendations. We're looking at they made note about the generator at Hickory. We believe that's going to end up being a replacement versus just a replacement of the head gasket. It's a little bit more involved than what we thought. So we're working on that, and we'll be working on trying to get you a quote going in the near future, what that would look like.
When you're talking about a replacement, are you talking about
Replacement of the generator.
the whole generator?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
It's my understanding is that one's been around a pretty long time.
Yeah, that's the small little,
It's a relatively small pump station,
Yeah.
but it's it's vital that it works when the power's out. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure we have the right piece in there. And if you'll notice
Can I just ask a question on that?
yeah,
So does KBX give a, when they're doing their preventative maintenance, like on any of the other pump station, do they give us a heads up on that? And can we, for next year, budget anything that may need replacement like that? or-
I've asked them to do a couple things for us. One is give us kind of what they see coming, but also I've asked for them to go back and do an evaluation of the pump stations, make a recommendation as to what pumps we would like to have sitting on the shelf.
Ah.
So that if a pump goes out, in particular, if a generator goes out, we can probably take in a temporary generator and get by for a little bit of time. But if a pump goes out, some of these pumps have a really long lead time. And so we're looking at saying, are there one or two of these pumps that if they went out, it would be detrimental to our operations? Or, maybe it's 5, different pumps. Should we have them sitting on the shelf and be ready to plug and play, with the idea that we would then rebuild the one that we take out, and that would become the shelf operating pump. So that's the conversation that we've had with them. They need to work that up for us, but they're supposed to be doing that. And yes, giving us like what we would consider not just preventative maintenance, but heavy
End
maintenance,
of life.
end of life kind of replacements. The other thing that I would make note is that you'll see that the crane's no longer on their list. We did have the team out to do that, and I believe it's on your agenda tonight to pay for that. So they have been out and they've done that.
I just wanted to add one thing to Steve's comments, with regard to the new pump stations for the sanitary sewer project, the Gorman Rupp stations. The nice thing about Gorman Rupp is they do keep replacement components for all of their pump stations for every job that they build or they supply. So if a pump goes down at one of those stations, within 24 hours, they can have a replacement pump or component shipped out from their warehouse in Mansfield, Ohio to the location. So the other thing that the authority should be aware of is every pump station has redundancy. So there's at least 2 pumps in every pump station that each pump functioning by itself can meet the hydraulic design capacity, not just the planned average daily flow, the peak flow for that pump station. It can meet that peak flow with one pump operating. So.
All right, and at this stage, I was going to, just because I think everybody here from the public is here regarding the French Road project. And that is on, that's item 12.7, which is the last item on our agenda. I'm sorry, I thought it was earlier on. But just so that we could maybe save you from hearing the rest of all of this, I'm sure, very interesting material. Perhaps we could jump to that item.
Sounds good.
And go through the bids. I mean, we are opening bids tonight for the reconstruction of that sewer line over there. And, I'm sure Dave would be willing to stay afterwards, after we go through the bid packets and have that vote. And then, after the meeting, if you wanted to talk with Dave too in more detail, about the process after we pick the contractor. Would that be okay with everybody?
Sounds great. Yeah, that was.
All right, so 12.7, report on the bids received for the sanitary sewer replacement on Westchester Pike, French Road, and Bryn Mawr Avenue. It is a combination of projects that was put out to bid via our engineer, Dave Porter. So I'll turn it over to you, Dave, to just kind of generally explain the agenda item.
Okay, so back in 2022, the authority authorized us to put out a public bid for replacement of section of sanitary sewer line on Westchester Pike. kind of in the vicinity of Radnor Drive. That included 350 lineal feet of pipe replacement, some manhole restoration to eliminate inflow and infiltration. That project came in at $312 and $312,575, which was, in our opinion, rather high for just that component. We included that project in this rebid and then added 3 different sections of the township for repair and or replacement of sanitary sewer. Another one along Westchester Pike near the Dunwoody Village, which includes kind of disconnection of kind of a problem area where sanitary sewer drains from Clover Lane down to in front of Dunwoody Village and then crosses Westchester Pike. The Dunwoody Pump Station also discharges to that manhole crossing Westchester Pike. Because of that added flow and the slope of the pipe crossing Westchester Pike, there had been problems with the blockages in that section of the line. So what we proposed is to move the crossing of Westchester Pike a little farther upstream, so that the additional flow from Clover Lane avoids that crossing, connects to another manhole where, you know, the other crossing already receives flow and then proceeds down to Bryn Mawr Avenue. So that's been added to the project. A replacement along French Road, which the folks are here this evening to hear about. That's going to replace about 300 feet of sanitary sewer line within an easement that's off of the northeasterly side of French Road. And lastly, there was a blockage and a sanitary sewer overflow near a property at 126 Bryn Mawr Avenue. That was cleared during that process of resolving the SSO. It was discovered that a portion of that sanitary sewer was broken and disconnected, disjointed. So we televised that line, determined that it was limited to one section of pipe beyond the manhole. We've added that project to this bid package as well. So the result, all of the bids were received via pen bid this afternoon. They were due by 2 o'clock this afternoon. We received 4 bids. One was Dolly Construction Corporation. Their total bid was $949,025.00. JMC Contractors Inc. was another bidder. They came in at $1,211,465.00. The third bidder was Jurek Inc. or AJ Jurek. They came in at $760,039.00. And the fourth bidder is N. Abenizio Contractors Inc. And their bid was $1,012,905.00. Obviously, Jurek is the apparent low bidder, typical of our process. We receive the bids, we open them, we read them aloud, as we're required by law to do. And over the next month, we'll download all of the documents from Penn Bid, make sure that they've provided all of their bid bonds, everything that they're required to execute and submit as part of that, to make sure that they're a responsive and responsible bidder. And we'll be prepared to make a recommendation to the authority at the next monthly meeting for award of a contract.
Maria, would you mind if I make a run at putting that in layman's terms for the folks in the audience?
I
So-
really appreciate it, Mike. I'm
So
sure they would
this
too.
was the public opening of the bids, right? And our process is that we need a month to tabulate the bids. We need to make sure that everything's in order. So this is likely to be on the agenda next month, I think, for action. And you look like you want to say.
Turn his mic off.
Oh, I'm sorry. And you know, you'll see some progress from there. Like Maria said, if you want to stick around and talk to Dave after the meeting, you're welcome. But I think that the board members just wanted to move this up in case you know. So that's kind of exciting too.
In the alternative, I would offer, we had gone out and met with the folks at 309 French. I'm happy to schedule another site meeting if you think that would be beneficial as well. We can reach out to either the township or to my office and schedule some time. Should have some time over the next week or so to come out and make a site visit. I can sit down, I can bring a plan with me, and we can go through everything at that point as well.
Dave, I have a quick question.
Yes.
I know you just opened the bids today and it's hard to answer this question, but roughly $500,000 in bid variance from top to bottom. Is that typical?
There can be a large variation depending on how busy contractors are. For example, JMC was high at $1.2 million. JMC just did our lift crane repair for Ellis Pump Station. They are typically a smaller project group. They're a smaller outfit. They did the stream bank restoration at 314 Summit for us as well. It's obviously a smaller project. So when smaller contractors bid larger jobs, they can tend to get expensive.
Okay, that helps. It just seemed like a
Yeah,
large.
no, I agree. It varied by $475,000. I noticed that right away.
We often see that on bids,
Gotcha.
from the township side as well.
Okay.
It's,
Well, thank you.
it really, I think it does depend on the size of the
Makes
contractor
sense. Yeah.
and just how hungry they really are. Sometimes a contractor will bid high, hoping that doesn't really get it, but if he gets it, then he's built enough cushion in there that he doesn't care.
Gotcha. Good.
Dave, real quick, just had a question. I guess these folks are concerned, like, let's say we approve it next month. We say this is who we're going with. Typically, how long would it take for work to start? Like, it all depends on the contractor, or how does that work? Right, I mean, that's probably the big.
Yeah, so within the contract, we have certain deadlines to meet. If we award a contract, we have the ability to dictate the start of construction. So provided that we get all of their contract documents executed and back to us within the required timeframe that's in the contract. And we get all the product submittals and review all the product submittals, approve those. We can be in a position to issue a notice to proceed probably within a month or two. Certainly within a month is not out of the realm of possibility. That component of the overall project is probably a 2-week construction duration. Understanding folks have plans for spring and summer. They want to enjoy their outdoor areas, and considering where the authority is with regard to evaluating budget and planning for this project, we can determine when we allow the contractor to do certain portions of the project. We typically don't like to dictate schedule to them, but we have the ability to do that.
Would they be running all 3 projects simultaneously?
Depends on the contractor. For example, sanitary sewer project, J.O. and Bradley had at sometimes 4 different crews running. So I don't think anybody, Abenizzo is probably close to the size of the company, but obviously they're not the low bidder. So Jurek probably would do 1 project at a time, I would imagine.
So I think the next step is, would be, we'll determine who the contractor is going to be.
Right.
After we do our due diligence on reviewing the bid materials. Next meeting, we would be selecting the actual contractor. And at that time, we're gonna have a lot more information as far as timeframes and
Correct.
and that type of.
Yes, and we
Okay.
also are required to have a pre-construction meeting at each one of the locations. Where we.
Would the
obviously-
homeowners be able to attend any of those meetings?
Obviously, we're on their property, so we want to be sensitive to the fact that, that
And
the
we can
contractor
keep
is
them
gonna be.
apprised as to when those meetings
Yes, we
are.
can do that.
The other thing we can do, I'd be happy to set up a time with Dave, and we could meet with any of the homeowners in the area ahead of time and just go through the project specifically, what it's all about. And we can even do that hopefully in the next 30 days, as Dave
Sure.
mentioned, just to kind of let you understand what the project is, and then you could give us feedback based on that, if there was some time. Like,
I think them being involved with the contractor is really important.
no, I
mean,
understand. I'm just saying if we can give, if they understood what the project was, what the impact is now, then when we bring the contractor out, they're not so much trying to figure out what the impact is. They're just understanding how the contractor is going to approach it. That's why I'm saying that. I'm glad to give you the time up front so that you can ask the questions you want to ask.
Yeah, and we can get feedback. So if there are any special events, graduations, weddings, things like that, that you want to have outdoor space available to celebrate those things, we certainly don't want to say, hey, we're going to be digging your backyard up tomorrow and you have parties planned. So we certainly will take that into consideration when we dictate to the contractor when they can start construction on that portion of the project.
And Stephanie, you had it.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, please come back up to the.
Look
mic.
at you.
I turned it off. So get a green light.
Just get a green light.
Never been accused of being quiet. Okay. So my question is, has it been considered at all to run our lines separately as opposed to three, like a shared line, the way it exists right now? So when all of us purchased our homes, no one knew that we were on a shared sewer line. In fact, I think you dug up the easement, but, or someone did, but
Yeah.
like George couldn't find it. We didn't get it at settlement. We had no idea there was an easement on the property and there was shared sewer line. So my question is that being considered as part of this bid process that we all go on separate sewer lines?
The short answer is no, it was not considered as part of this bid process. And the reason it was not considered is because through this investigation, it was determined that the authority is responsible to operate and maintain that line. So our direction was to evaluate it and replace that line to solve that issue of having the blockages.
I mean,
Because it's
I think what
Currently,
you,
it's a small, the pipe isn't big enough, is it? Isn't that part of it?
There's several different, I think, causing and contributing factors to why the line was blocked. Some of it had to do with things being put down the sewer that shouldn't have. Some of it based on our field survey indicates that the pipe may or may not be completely in alignment horizontally and or vertically. So there's changes in directions that may be in the pipe that are causing and contributing to things getting caught up in the sanitary sewer line. It is a smaller line. I think they're 4 or 6 inches in diameter. So typically any sanitary sewer main, when we extend it for public purposes, is 8-inch diameter minimum that we would install.
the other thing I would just mention to you, if we went back and allowed each one of you to put in your own line and connect to the piece, you would need an easement from your neighbors to connect to that line, and we would no longer maintain that line. And so, because we don't maintain individual lines, we maintain shared lines throughout the township or throughout the authority's area. So I think that you would want us, I'm not saying that you do, but I think you would want us to put back in a larger line, which is what we're doing, that would take care of that so that you're only responsible to the point in which you connect to the public sewer. Because if not, you would be responsible for a much longer distance to connect to the public sewer. And I don't think you would want that.
So in other words, like someone in a different house, for instance, in that same neighborhood, if they had this type of a problem, I mean, and they wanted to connect separately and have their own separate line.
They would be
That
responsible
their
to
financial responsibility.
wherever they connect to the public sewer. And so if everybody becomes individuals, that's not considered public sewer. It's when they connect to a shared line. That's how the whole town is set up, is on shared lines that people connect to. And it's always from a spot of that shared line that you connect to. And so for your personal line, you're only responsible till you get to that pipe. If we took that pipe out, and each person had to run their own line, you would be responsible to the line that's much further down. And so I would assume that you don't want that because it's much more costly for you as individuals. I mean, if that's what you want, you come talk to us. We can look at that piece of it. I just can't imagine that you would want that.
Well, I think we're the only 3 homes that have a shared line.
No, but
In that
everybody in the
whole area.
township, everybody in the township is on a shared line. Your lateral runs to
Yeah,
some
that's what
line
that's
that's
what I
shared.
mean, though, the lateral line. So maybe I'm using the wrong term, but
But you have a lateral that runs to this line,
right,
correct?
right.
Each of the neighbors has a lateral that runs to this line. And so it then becomes, it's just a stub that feeds 3 houses. But if you think about it, throughout the whole township, everybody is connecting to a line that's shared with somebody else. And they're responsible for the connection to that shared spot.
What's that?
That's why we're putting in a larger pipe to accommodate the 3 houses.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't know why it happened the way it did back in the day.
Yeah.
Years ago.
That was back in the 70s.
We've done a lot of digging to find the easement for this, and when we found it, that's when we started taking the actions to take care of correcting. Sometimes I would like to say that never happens in developments, but sometimes those things happen. We try to do a much. I want to be careful how I say this, because obviously a mistake happened at some point. We weren't aware of that easement. And it wasn't put on your deed, and it should be a part of your deed, and everybody should be aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, similar to, private property owners that are not aware that they share a sanitary sewer lines because properties change hand over the years. Same thing happens on municipal level. The managers change, supervisors change, authority board members change. And what was that, corporate knowledge isn't transferred to the next person that's in charge, and we're 6 or 7 managers down the road now. Obviously, when we found out that there was an issue, we're obligated now to address the issue.
Yep, I mean, we've been working on this for a long time, trying to resolve this. Yeah, I don't know. But even when you buy a piece of property and you're on sewer, like if you have an attorney take you to closing, and you're on public sewer and you don't see an easement on there as an attorney, I don't know, should a light bulb go off? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like when you went to closing, if you had legal counsel at closing, reviewing your legal documents, they should have put 2 and 2 together. I'm not saying that didn't happen. Yeah, it should have.
Yeah.
But so the title company either missed it or it wasn't there, but like the attorney could see that, okay, you're on public sewer, but there's no easement for your sewer line. Why is that? I don't know.
Theoretically, there could be a lateral that runs right across your property line into the street and into a main, right?
Yeah.
Then you wouldn't see anything on the title report necessarily, but I mean, I mean, I understand that there's this mystery around, like, how did this happen? But at the end of the day, you want to be on sewer, you got to have a sewer line, and, and I understand that the line may be undersized by today's standards, but that's what we're here to remedy, so.
So we're gonna move on with the rest of the meeting unless anybody else want to make a comment? If you want to come up and,
The question is, how are the lines identified? And I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like, all lines, what do you mean?
We found out about it when you guys did. There was a backup and there were calls to the township. So we started investigating.
Right, so we had our land surveyors go out and physically locate, locate it by horizontal and vertical. You know, we have elevations on it, we have location with respect to where the easement is and where the line is within the easement. No,
We
No, so-
found the original easement after much digging,
so-
and that's how we know where it was.
so the easements that are recording have geometry, they have a description. We tied that description, there's an overall subdivision plan, we found field evidence for property corners and determined based on where the property corners in the field, the distances between those property corners agree with the subdivision plan. We used the subdivision plan to lay out the easement. We also physically located with respect to those property corners, the cleanouts in the rear yards where the sanitary sewer lateral or pipe is. And that allowed us to determine the location of the pipe and the depth of the pipe based on measuring down those cleanouts.
Anybody else? All right, we will keep, no, we're not, no, we're not making a motion to accept. There's no action tonight. Okay. Like, yeah, next meeting. Okay. All right, I think, Steve, that you had finished the operation manager's report, although I'm not sure you went over RHM flow figures.
Well, RHM flow figures are in your
So exciting.
packet like every month, so you're welcome to look at those. I would have you take note. We've had a couple of significant rains and you can definitely see our flow goes up, which tells me we need to do, that cammering becomes more important. We really need to get on that. I will tell you, RHM has been out and doing some cammering on our behalf in a couple areas, checking some things, doing some root cleaning. And so they are doing that. And so but we'll also be looking at adding more of that type of work on.
Can I ask about the audit?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I meant to ask when brought the treasurer's report. Did the audit start yet, or is that after?
The audit materials have been turned over to the auditor. So he's working on them. So, or the team is working on it. There's actually several, there may be more than one auditor working on it. I think there's probably about 3 or 4. So they're started the process.
Okay.
Right, and we've already reviewed the resignation of Tom Greco. Moving on, 9.1, consider approving the bills on check register dated April 21, 2025, totaling $273,499.85. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a second from Walter. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, 10.1, consider approving a payment to JMC Contractors for crane repair at Ellis Preserve Pump Station in the amount of $9,800. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Walter. Second?
Second.
Second from Steve. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consider closing out the Melmark project and releasing the bond covering the cost of the public improvements. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Tim. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Walter. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consider approving reimbursement in the amount of $400 to Mr. and Mrs. Sweeney for Flynn tree payment to finish tree work on Sweeney easement. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Walter, second.
Second.
Second from Steve. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was a good deal.
Consider approving the delinquent accounts be sent to Portnoy for collections. This includes balances of $500 or more and past due balances over 90 days. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Second from Tim. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consider approving Maccombie's wetlands and stream restoration proposal dated April 17, 2025, with $5,500 in cost for Maccombie wetland scientist, and choosing between option one of $14,911.35, option two, $10,224.17, or option three at $4,396, which cover plant material and delivery, tree tubes from Octoraro, and possible deer fencing from Benner Deer Fence. So in your package, those options are all laid out. I don't know if it's hard to make a motion with three options, so perhaps I should make a motion as to what. Yes, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pick the option that does not have the tree fencing with the work that's going to be done in part by the township, and Octaro, I guess, is.
So township's bid is actually separate. It's the next item
it's
on
the
the
next
agenda,
item.
so
Okay, that's
I
right.
would not add that in.
Okay,
But so are you saying does not have the deer fencing? Is
That's
that what
right.
you're saying?
yeah,
So you're picking option three.
option three. So motion to approve option three at $4,396.
I think we need deer fencing.
Okay,
You gotta spend that kind of money. The deer are a problem. They're
why
a
don't
major
we do the
problem.
motion in the second, and then you come in with your
The
comment.
motion is second, have a discussion, and if you vote this motion down and make another one, so be it.
Because I want to hear you on this, Tim, so, all right, so I'll make the motion. And do I hear second from Walter? Comments?
My comment is, if you're gonna spend the money, do it right, right? Because especially if we had a summer like that, deer are gonna find a place where it's wet and they're gonna try and eat stuff.
Yeah,
And even if we had the township put it in and keep an eye on it because we gotta get it to what, 85% growth or something like that for a for an amount of time. I mean, if you spend the extra money, you don't want to come back and plan again and then plan again. It's like you just kind of put dirt on the hole every time. I just think
Okay.
if you spend I don't know how much more, can we just do that option? And then see what, like, how much the fencing would be? Like, where are we
it's
going? to look?
6,000 for the fencing, so
Do we
we're up
find
to the
a place
10,000.
I guarantee we go to like, if we have the township guys, they could probably go to Home Depot and buy deer fencing and put it up.
You know,
But I
that
have
is
a guy
another
doing-
good point.
I have a guy doing this work at my house now, and I'm saving like all kinds of money because he's going to places and just buying, like, I don't know, how much is it to get deer fencing? It can't be that much.
Right.
Can you explain that?
Can we
How
get-
many places did we go to get
Someplace
deer
else.
fencing? Or did we just rely?
Yeah, so we had picked them. That was the recommendation. We can look at other places and try to get that cheaper.
So I think this might be an option. Why don't we keep the motion as
Yes.
is, 4,000, but make it conditioned upon confirmation that we can't get a more competitive price for deer fencing.
So,
Add that into
so,
12.4.
do you want to,
Or
I'm gonna give you the most complicated motion and then maybe somebody could just say so moved at the end of it. But I think your motion would be in the alternative, right? Your motion would be to approve, I'm gonna do it sort of backwards from the way you did it, Maria. So to approve option three, unless the township or the authority can acquire deer fencing at an amount less than 6,000, I'm not doing the math, but $6,000, in which case the authority would go with option one. To option three, option three,
Option two. If-
10,000.
If you're doing it for less than 6,000,
yeah,
you're
you're going down to option three, aren't you? And then you're installing the deer fence by a separate motion on
oh, you want a separate motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, then it would
Alright,
be option
gotcha.
two. So it's three unless the township is able to
It's
obtain.
three, unless the township is able to obtain the deer fence for less than $6,000, or is not able to attain
Yeah.
the deer fence for less than $6,000, in which case I believe it's one.
Yeah, one is with them and with the other team installing it.
Oh, we're gonna
Two.
start, okay, then it's two.
So it's two.
That's why.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Okay.
We're looking right now.
That's 100 linear feet.
We were looking at. deer
We'll make the
fencing.
minutes read better than that,
Look at
How
how
much
cheap
is
it
it?
is.
This excludes the like poles that you
Yeah, that's
need.
all right.
Is there any
Pretty
chance
close.
that township, we could get a quote from them to install deer fencing?
we didn't price out the deer fencing. The quote that you're gonna look at next, township basically said whether we install the deer fencing or whether we install the little pieces over the, what are they called, deer, tubes, sorry, whether the tree tubes, the township said we'll charge the same amount to do either. Just so it didn't get confusing. We think it's probably about the same amount of time to put deer fencing up around the whole area as it is to put individual tree tubes on every tree and stake it in all the pieces that need to be done. So that was the township's commitment from the side of from the Township Public Works Department. And that's why it's kept separate. But what I think that is being suggested, and we would just, if you give us a not to exceed amount.
Yeah, we need another arm to that motion. I think.
If you gave us, what I would suggest, here's what I would suggest, is you pass, tell me if this makes sense,
No,
it's pass option
I'm
3.
just gonna I'm sorry, because I am absolutely, I don't think any of us here want to pay $6,000
No.
for the deer fence.
No.
Is what so I don't think it's an.
Okay, so you're gonna do option 3. And then you're gonna authorize an amount not to exceed $6,000 or not to exceed
See whatever
number
dollar
you come
value
up
you
with
want for deer fencing.
For deer fence.
And then we would
To be
get
installed
deer
by the township.
fencing instead.
You could buy the poles.
The township's gonna have to install that for free because we can't change their emotions.
Yeah, well, but they were gonna do it anyway.
Or not.
We were gonna do the deer fencing for the same price.
It would just be the cost plus the cost of the.
So if you approve option 3
Yeah,
and then come back and say, and I'm making this number up, you would pick the number.
Yeah.
And say that you're willing to do deer fence if we can do it for $3,000
Yeah.
more. Then we would go out and look for deer fence, and if we could get the materials for 3,000 instead of 6,000, then we would do deer fence. If not, we would just do option 3.
I agree.
Okay, so that's, so what I think I would,
You guys gotta make sure you have a number that y'all.
that you all agree to. But so I would approve option 3 by itself
it'll be significantly
with,
less.
with
than-
a second motion stating if we can get deer fence for less than 3, then we would install deer fence
Minimum 3.
instead of those others for that piece. Does that make sense?
Am I making
Yeah,
this?
I think it's okay. We're gonna call this, item 12.3A and 12.3B.
Yeah.
Because it's all part of the same motion, really.
We've had a hard time putting this even down for you to discuss it because there was lots of moving parts.
Well, you
Okay, so
guys,
you,
you guys
Maria,
did a
you
nice
have a
job.
motion on the table with a
Yeah.
second for option 3. So it sounds like you want to act on that, call that 12.3A, and then give us a not to exceed amount.
For 12.3.
For 12.3.
12.3.
Right, so the only revision I'm making is that we are calling this item 12.3A, that on the motion and the second that is on the floor right now.
And that's for option.
And we're
3.
gonna have a vote on that, that's,
Yeah, one more. How many feet of deer fencing do we need? Do we have any idea? Like, we're looking at it right now at Home Depot, it's so inexpensive, and then you gotta buy the poles, but it's nowhere close to $6,000.
I mean, installing the poles is probably most of the.
Well, if you give us a not to exceed amount, Dave will stop
Yeah.
by Home Depot on his way home tonight.
No, we're looking at it
I
right
want
now.
to say it was about 600 feet, but let me.
That's
double
fine,
check.
it's even better.
Yeah, so two deer fence kits, 7-foot high poly deer fence,
Yep.
330 feet each.
330 times 6,
Yep.
1,800 feet.
So
1,800
660.
feet, all right, we'll look at it, I'm gonna look at it. You with the math, good. All right, cool. All right, let's move on.
Okay, we're good?
We're good.
All right, so on the motion now 12.3A, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is that unanimous?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so now 12.3B, the motion is to authorize the township to,
Is the township acquiring it or is the authority?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have the authority acquire it. It's
Right.
just that the township would still do the installation, same price, no matter which one you choose.
Okay,
So you're gonna still go ahead and have the authority apply to do it, but your motion is basically that we're gonna go on your behalf. We'll
Okay.
act on your
so
behalf.
authorizing the motion is to authorize,
Township to
Did-
acquire deer fencing in an amount not to exceed X.
Okay, the township
Or the
acquired
authority, I'm sorry, the authority to apply.
the authority to acquire township fencing and installation.
Well, the installation is already included in your next item.
Yeah, so you just need to focus on the price of the deal.
You've got to be kidding me. Okay, I apologize for that. I didn't realize that. Okay. Okay, so wait a minute. So
It'd just be 12.4 plus the cost of the. deer
that's what I
fence.
was thinking. Should we just revise
I don't
12.4?
want you to revise the number because it's been published in an agenda.
Okay,
That's why we're doing this in a way that's.
Okay.
a
Less
little
than that, it's fine.
counterintuitive.
okay,
I'm trying
so
to keep this as part of the
12.3
agenda
B,
item
we're,
We have listed.
okay, so we're, 12.3 B is then the motion to authorize the authority to obtain materials
Not
for
exceeding-
deer fencing at a cost not to exceed $3,000.
Sounds good.
Do I hear the motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Tim.
Second.
Second from Steve. Any questions or comments?
No,
All those in favor?
aye.
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 All right, moving on.
Thank God we didn't make those people sit through that.
Oh, my God.
Barely.
That would not have been pretty. Okay. 12.4, consider accepting quote from the township for using public works staff to assist Macomb with wetlands plantings, cost not to exceed $4,736. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Second from Tim. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consider approving proposal from Avaqua in the amount of $11,545 for the completion of the bioxide system repairs. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Steve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Walter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Consider approving the annual generator services proposal in the amount of $4,008 from Premium Power Services. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Walter. Second?
Second.
Second from Steve. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, we've already done 12.7.
Yeah.
Any old business
Nope.
from anybody for the good of the order? No? All right. In that case, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
That was great.